If you like to keep your JK's engine cool, then you might want to look into your radiator. Today on CJ Off-Road, we're going to be ditching our factory radiator for this upgraded Mishimoto. This Mishimoto Radiator is a direct fit replacement for all 2007 to 2018 JK Wranglers equipped with either a 3.8 liter or a 3.6 liter engine. This radiator is going to be 60% thicker than the factory radiator, allowing for much more cooling properties and to give you a nice clean look. This radiator is constructed out of aluminum and then hand TIG welded to ensure durability for a long time. It includes a 1.3 bar high pressure radiator cap, which is going to effectively raise the boiling point of the engine coolant, providing a safer and more effective system than the factory JK cooling system. It includes a magnetic drain plug to ensure that any metallic debris or fragments in your cooling system are going to easily be collected and removed harmlessly. Now our JK has been running hot for quite some time now, so we're going to get it replaced and thrown into our 2008 JK Wrangler. Tools we need for this installation: 1/4 inch ratchet, 7mm socket, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, small extension, 10mm ratchet wrench, trim removal tool, a pair of pliers, and a pan or something to catch the coolant. Before you start this install, disconnect the negative battery cable on your Jeep. It's going to protect all your electrical systems and keep you safe in the event that something shorts out. Use a 10mm socket to get this pulled off. Just have to loosen it up a little bit. And it should pull right up after you get it nice and loose. Just set this out of the way. Make sure it doesn't hit the positive battery terminal. Just tuck underneath there. Make sure you get a drain pan because this is the messy part. We're going to drain our radiator of all the coolant by twisting this knob. It's up here underneath the grill. Grab it with a pair of pliers and be easy. It is plastic. Turn it counterclockwise. We're just going to let it drain out. Now that you have your radiator completely drained of the coolant, we can now remove the factory air box. I'm going to go around and pull these 4 clips off, just like that, and then we'll get to removing it. Disconnect this PCV hose in the back. Pull the top of the airbox off. Set it aside like so. Pull this bottom section of the airbox off. There's going to be 2 grommets that it goes into. Just pull it straight up. It sits in a rubber grommet. It'll just give you a little bit of resistance. And it'll pull right out. Pull these 4 push pins off the radiator shroud on the top. Once you have the last one popped off, pull the shroud towards the Jeep, then you can pop it off. You can now remove this coolant overflow hose off the top of the radiator just by pulling on it. Make sure there's none in there. Once that's disconnected, honestly, I'm just going to put it in the top of the overflow tank. Wait if anything has to come out. Go right into there. And we can move on to getting this upper radiator hose off. Before we can knock out that upper radiator hose, we're going to disconnect the fan shroud plug right here by depressing on the back of it and pulling it straight out. Disconnect the upper radiator hose by depressing on this clamp with a pair of pliers. And just slowly twist it back. Be careful, there is still fluid in there. I just tucked it behind one of these AC vents, one of these AC hoses back here just to keep it, that way that fluid doesn't leak out. The coolant overflow tank is the next thing to be pulled out. Simply pull up on it a little bit. Helps if you can kind of reach in there, a little bit awkward. And there's a little slot at the top it'll pop right out of and pull right up, and you can set this out of the way for now. Now this is a little bit awkward to get to, but there are 3 push pins underneath the lower radiator shroud. Use that same trim removal tool you used up top and just get them pulled off. There's 2 8mm bolts that hold on this fan shroud. Let's use an 8mm socket and get them removed. Make sure you save these for later. You're going to be reinstalling this fan shroud onto the new Mishimoto Radiator. All right, and repeat the same process on the other side. Go ahead and pull the fan shroud out. The next step of this installation is to remove your grill. Now to do this, you have to remove the 6 clips at the top and disconnect the turn signals and just pull it out towards you. It's a really simple process. Just use a trim removal tool along the top, pull out the 6 pins, and on the back of the turn signals, you just turn them counterclockwise and pull them straight out. the grill removed, we can now pull off the 4 8mm bolts that are at each corner of this AC condenser in the front and get that removed. I'm going to use an 8mm ratchet wrench to get this done. Make sure that you save the hardware. Next, you can remove the lower radiator hose by depressing the same clamp like you did for the upper. Just giving it a little pull back. Make sure that you have your drain pan underneath here, because there's going to be coolant inside of it. There are going to be 2 clips on the side here for this radiator shroud. Pull those off with a trim removal tool. Repeat the same process on the other side. We're going to disconnect the lower shroud by pulling 2 more pop pins. There's one on this side and one on that side. Trim removal tool is going to be your best bet. Just get under there, pull it downwards. There's 2 10mm bolts that hold this onto the upper shroud. Go ahead and get those removed. On the other side, I'm going to use an extension to make it a little bit easier. Same 10mm socket to get it pulled off. On the driver's side of the radiator, there's a bracket that actually holds on the AC condenser lines. In between there's an 8mm bolt that has to be removed so you can get that bracket off of the radiator. It's very hard to see, but you can get in there with a simple 1/4" ratchet and an 8mm socket. With everything disconnected, it's now the long-awaited time to pull out this old radiator and get rid of it. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the factory radiator versus the new Mishimoto one. As you can see, the Mishimoto one on the right is much newer. It's all aluminum and TIG welded. It's a lot thicker, close to 60% thicker than the factory radiator, and it's not as beat up. Honestly, our factory radiator has seen years of abuse on the trail and on the highway, so it was well worth the time to pull this out. We're gonna get started putting our new Mishimoto radiator into its place and show you how that works. Now it's time to install the new Mishimoto radiator. Drop it into the location. Watch all your wires in that. Then install the 2 10mm bolts that hold it onto the top support. With the radiator mounted up loosely with the hardware, we're now going to install the AC condenser, use the included hardware with the Mishimoto radiator, and use the top stud. We're going to start with the passenger side here, get it mocked up, and then get the other side and all of them tightened down. These are going to use a 10mm socket to get them tightened down. I'm going to use this ratchet wrench and get it done. Down on the side of the radiator, there's a small hole for the AC condenser lines to go onto. Use the included hardware to get that bolt started. It's really tricky to see, but use a 10mm socket and you'll get it started up. Now that the AC condenser is fully tight, we're going to get these 2 upper bolts tightened down into the upper radiator support using that same 10mm ratchet wrench. While we were doing this Mishimoto radiator install, we figured it'd be a great time to upgrade the radiator hoses. So Mishimoto hooked us up with a set of these blue silicone radiator hoses for our 2008 Jeep JK Wrangler. Now these are going to be available for the 3.8 liter and the 3.6 liter engine. So if you have a newer Jeep, you can get a nice set of hoses, and no, you don't have to get them in blue. So if you want a different color, we've got red, black, there's olive drab, and even camo to put underneath your Jeep to give it that custom touch and make it run a whole lot cooler. So let's get these installed now. Let's get rid of this factory lower hose. We're gonna have to go underneath to right next to the engine. You can't see where that clip is. I'm just using a pair of pliers to see if I can get that connection off, get this yanked. Let's slide this new Mishimoto lower radiator hose into place, then slide a band clamp provided. We'll get another band clamp on, and then attach this to our Mishimoto radiator up top here. Make sure it's fully seated on. Clamp over the bulge and right behind it. We'll get them tightened up with a 7mm socket, or a flathead will do the trick too. Tighten both band clamps. I'm gonna get this one tightened by the engine right here up. Now that you have that lower radiator hose installed and fully tightened, We can install the fan shroud. Use the provided hardware to go into the threaded studs. Tighten them up with a 10mm socket. Plug it back in. You'll hear a click. Reinstall the overflow tank onto the fan shroud. Push the overflow line onto the top of the Mishimoto radiator. Clip it back under here. Put the cap back on. Remove the upper radiator hose. Put the clamp out of the way. Let's get it pulled off. Install the Mishimoto upper radiator hose. Get it mocked up into the proper location, then we'll slide a clamp over it and get that tightened up. Slide one of the band clamps over. We'll use a 7mm socket to get that tightened up. Put another clamp over this end. Get it onto the radiator. Make sure it's all the way up. The little bulge here, make sure it's over that. We'll get it tightened down, once again with that 7mm socket. We're gonna reinstall this piece here. We honestly debated on not putting it on, but if you're gonna lean in and out to work on your engine bay, this is gonna get really hot if it's been running. And leaning over it, you're gonna burn yourself, so we're gonna put this back on, even though it covers up all that new Mishimoto goodiness. Once you have them into place, push these push pins down. After that's all installed, it's now time to put your air box back in. First, put this lower section in, back into the grommets. Then we'll get this top piece back on and put those clips back into place. Attach your PCV hose to the air box. Put the grill back into place. Now we'll reconnect the battery. Well, it is a little bit hard to see, but we just wrapped up the Mishimoto Radiator install on our JK Wrangler. We have it filled up with coolant that's recommended for our Jeep, and everything is running smoothly. We started up the Jeep and turned on the heat, that way it flushes and cycles all the way through. This install takes about 5 hours, and you can do it in your driveway with simple hand tools. And you can find this Mishimoto radiator as well as the hoses and a lot of other parts for your JK right here at cjponyparts.com. Hope you enjoyed that video. To stay up to date on our CJ Off-Road videos, make sure to subscribe up top here, and for any other installs, make sure to click the link right above.